All right, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for the next session in our Illini Aero Connections series. Today we'll be talking with three recent Illini grads and their unknown trajectory, how they came out of the AE department and ended up in a field that is not technically aerospace engineering. So we're glad you're with us today for this session. And I'm going to turn it over now to Samantha McHugh. Samantha is a 2013 graduate of aerospace engineering, and she'll be our moderator for today. Thanks, Samantha.
All right, awesome. So yeah, I'd like to get started right out of the gates with introducing our speakers and let them give the little short version of their bio. So Parth, let's start with you, and then we'll go on to Stephen and Violet.
Sounds good. Can you hear me?
Yep, you sound good.
Hi everyone. My name is Parth Patel. I graduated from AE at UIUC in 2015. After that, I started my career at GE Aviation in the Edison Engineering Development Program. That program is a full-time work, part-time school rotational program. So through that program, I had 3 different one-year-long rotations at the company. And at the end of the program, I also finished my master's in mechanical engineering from Ohio State. My first rotation was in high-pressure turbine design. I then moved on to engine test and performance, and in physics-based analytics and finance BI. After finishing that program, I remained at GE for another year as data scientist before deciding to pursue my second master's, this time in data science at Northwestern. Most recently, I spent the summer interning at Facebook as a data scientist intern, and I'll be returning there full-time after I graduate this December. And that's it for me.
I think I'm supposed to go next. Hi, I'm Steve Macenski. I graduated in 2017. When I first graduated, actually, I was going to go and do my master's at Illinois in robotics in the aerospace department with Professor Brettel. But then during an internship, actually a startup company in Silicon Valley called Symbi Robotics offered me a bunch of money and said, hey, continue doing this stuff for us full time. So I went and did that working in a small garage in San Francisco for about 2 years. Before they raised an A round to get some real money and go scale to a larger company. At that point, I decided to leave and focus more on the general robotics community. So I signed on with Samsung Research America, and so I focus on open source robotics software. So things like the robot operating system. I lead development on the navigation stack for ROS2 and a bunch of other projects in that community, and have been doing that for about a year now, and we'll continue doing it into the future.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Violet Kamber. I graduated with my BS in aerospace at Illinois in May of 2019. About 2 weeks after graduating, I moved out to the Metro Detroit area to pursue my career in the automotive industry. So I'm currently working at Fiat Chrysler Automobiles. I'm also in the rotational program at FCA. So I go through 7 4-month-long rotations in product development. And it's awesome. I get to learn a lot about different aspects of engineering that the company has to offer. As well, I'm working on my master's, my MS in mechanical engineering here at Oakland University, and I'll be finishing that up in December. So looking forward to that.
Awesome. Okay, thank you guys. So I'd like to jump back to when you were all in school and kind of talk through, I guess, what your interests were then, if you were involved in non-aero things, and if that's kind of what led you to a different path, or kind of how that transition happened from school, or maybe you were more aero focused, to that first job out of school. And I know you guys have all kind of touched on it, but give us a little bit of insight into where did that going away from aero start, and how early did that start when you were in school? Parth, let's start with you.
Yeah, sure. I came into aerospace engineering kind of fairly unsure on where I wanted to go, and even if aerospace was really the right fit for me at that time. I really just wanted to kind of graduate with a job and, be able to, start working, so I hoped that I'd finish the degree and go on to work at one of the larger aerospace companies like Boeing, Lockheed, maybe stay there and kind of climb the ladder towards a technical management type role. This was kind of my vision coming in. And what really kind of helped me to get a bit more clear was having an internship experience at GE for about 7 months. That really kind of showed me how do my classes translate to the real world and be able to kind of find out what I was more interested in. That led me more towards the fluids classes and the CFD route and things like that. So, I started finding a deeper interest there. So when I first went to GE, my rotation that I chose to be first in was high pressure turbine design, to be in the hot section working on turbine blade design. So, and I found that really interesting. But I really liked, some reason I started to like coding a lot, even though I hated it in high school, didn't really like it that much in, undergrad, but then starting to apply it on real world problems and using different languages like Python, I started kind of getting a drift towards that. Then really started to like data. So I started pushing my career at GE and opening up roles in the data realms, and then kind of wanted to keep going farther and farther towards the cutting edge of that, which kind of led me to want to go back to school and be able to then go on to a different company and work on the next level of data science. And
Okay, awesome, cool.
I can answer also the student organization questions. I mean, I was at school, I was mostly all in the aero organizations, so AIAA, SAB, AE, UAV. So I didn't really branch out that far. But those organizations really provided a lot of the soft skills, the communication, the collaboration, working with corporate relations, a lot of the things that really helped me be able to transition my career however I wanted to when I started working, because I was able to work with managers and open up new roles that otherwise wouldn't have been possible.
Great, thank you. Steve, what about you?
Yeah. So when I was in high school, I was lucky enough in the suburbs of Chicago to have a BattleBots program actually at my high school. So we had a big CNC fabrication lab, and in place of kind of like a metal shop or a wood shop, we had basically a giant robotics class where we'd design, manufacture, assemble, test, and then ultimately battle these BattleBots. So mostly electronics and mechanical work. And I kind of really I've always enjoyed working with my hands, and I've always enjoyed building things. And so I kind of figured, okay, mechanical engineering would be something interesting for me. But when I started talking to people who are mechanical engineers in the Midwest, what you hear a lot is like automotive, and people who, I think there was my neighbor next door, he used to build like the glove boxes for this particular model of like Ford truck. And I was like, I will shoot myself if I work on the interior glove box of a car, just for every year for my career. So I said, no, I'm not doing that. So I wanted to look and say, okay, where else can I build things, but not have to build them on a mass production scale like automotive? And aerospace was like, okay, you build 100 of these parts, or of a rocket engine, you might build 20 of them, in the total lifespan of the part. So you can use a lot more of the creative CNC equipment, and you can really build things out of the cool exotic materials that are more interesting to think about and work with. So I figured, okay, yeah, let's go into aerospace. And then in the department when I was here, I started, with a lot of clubs. I took it very seriously when people told me that you should get involved very early on. I joined a fraternity, I was in a bunch of clubs. I actually started SatDev when I was at Illinois with Alex Case. I was the president of ISS when I was there, involved with a number of other clubs in other capacities. And I was always kind of straddling the aerospace and robotics interests. So I for every kind of thing I did in robotics, I also did something in aerospace, and I was very excited about the space side of things. And I still am very excited about the space side of things. But then kind of as opportunities kind of grew, I kind of continued going down a line where I was going to get ahead in an area better than others. So when I was in college, I had an internship at John Deere, which taught me a lot about working with people and mechanical skills. And then I worked at NASA, where I was actually doing robotics work at NASA. And then I kind of continued to build on that success by doing robotics work at NASA. Then it was easier to get a startup job in robotics. It was easier to then lead a robotics team, then now ultimately lead a very large community within the robotics ecosystem. So, I've just been kind of building on successes over my career rather than, starting over after every individual thing. And there's a term for that called career capital. There's a couple books that talk about this. I'd recommend checking those out.
Awesome. Maybe while you're, you could put
Sorry.
some of those in the chat so people, if they're interested.
Oh,
Sorry,
yeah,
Steve.
Certainly.
Go ahead, Violet.
Okay. Yep. So I was really interested in aero engineering. I think it actually started, I was taking AP physics senior year in high school, and I knew I had to be honest with myself. I knew that my strengths didn't really lie in chemistry, and I wanted to get far away from that. So I really wanted to focus on something that had to do with physics. So my options came down to mechanical. I always knew I had a passion for cars and also automotive design. But aerospace was really interesting. After doing all the research, I found that it was really versatile. So, if you're an aero engineer, you could work on, flight, on spacecraft, or on the ground. You could work again in automotive, or even something like high-speed trains. I took a course at U of I that was all about high-speed rail, and I thought it was awesome. You can relate aerodynamics in just about every way. So I thought this degree in aero was super valuable, and it's also impressive. So when you taking everything into account, it was easy to choose aero. I knew that it was similar enough to mechanical, where it offered lots of job opportunities. But in the end, I knew that aero was the one for me.
Awesome. Okay, perfect. So one of the things that, you kind of just touched on it, Violet. Once you get into industry, right, no matter what field you go into, there are sort of, like subsystems, right, and different areas of every business that the skills are so overlapping. So, you're maybe working on a daily basis with an electrical engineer and a mechanical engineer and, computer science engineer, whatever it may be. I'm interested in you guys kind of giving us a little bit more detail on what skills that you used that overlapped with your aero degree in either some of your initial jobs or maybe jobs you're doing now. And I know you've all touched on soft skills kind of already, but if you want to highlight maybe like the most important thing for you in undergrad, whether it was school or school related clubs that really helped and translated into the field you're in, even though it's currently not aerospace. Parth, go for it.
Alrighty. So like I said in my intro, I'm currently finishing my third degree now, and I've attended UIUC, OSU, and Northwestern, and by far I'd say the AE at UIUC was the most rigorous and challenging of those degrees. I can confidently say that I experienced the most growth during that time. My current work on social networks and large-scale data science is pretty far from aerospace, but my foundational competencies and strengths all come from this program, I think. Some of the most valuable things I got from the program were good time management skills, prioritization abilities, effective problem solving capabilities, and technical depth. I'm preaching to the choir, I think, when I say often you have homeworks from AE or projects where you might feel like lectures to date haven't completely prepared you for that homework or that project, but you manage to use your resources, the internet, peers, textbooks, whatever, you find your way through it. And through that process, you might even arrive at a couple of succinct questions you can ask the TAs or professors. And that's really analogous to the workplace. You might be working on things for the first time in your workplace that school couldn't prepare you for, but you'll make great impressions if you're able to solve these things or break ground on these problems through strong problem solving skills. I really think that UIUC kind of makes you at this program, and AE kind of hands you, you really become good at solving hard problems. I'd say there's 45 students there was at my GE development program, and we often had group assignments and peer work for a part-time degree. And it was evident that certain programs gave their students a much stronger technical foundation. So there's a few of us from Purdue and a few of us from Illinois. And it was clear we were steps above the playing field when it came to doing our aerospace technical homework problems. In fact, I took a gas dynamics course at OSU, which is essentially AE 312 here. And AE 312 was harder, had more concepts, and had more rigorous homework. I checked back-to-back 2 assignments, homeworks, and exams. And the bachelor's version at UIUC was harder than the master's version at OSU. So I'll just say it puts you a step above in technical capabilities.
That's awesome.
Sorry,
agree. I was going to say that Illinois is the hardest of all the schools that I've been to. Go for it, Steve.
Yeah, I definitely echo everything that Parth said. I think definitely the big thing is for me is math and context of working in large systems. When you deal, especially going to a more software and technology focused field from aerospace, you have a lot of people who have degrees in computer science, which then teach you basic things like algorithms and data structures and programming languages. And those are the kinds of things that I think that most competent engineers can pick up within a year pretty easily. And so what's really more beneficial is that you understand the engineering math and the engineering context and how you build things in a very robust and rigorous way that I think other programs don't teach you. So definitely all the time management skills and technical information that you absorb really helps you operate better as an engineer and then apply that to any field you want to go into. Illinois gives you just a bunch of different resources you have available to you between career fairs to help you get internships and jobs, You have networking opportunities through trips with different clubs. The clubs themselves give you technical leadership abilities and working with team members on complex projects. There's a lot of resources available to you that you just need to basically just like reach out and grab in order to be more successful in your career.
All right, I guess I'm next. So going off of what Steve mentioned, with the RSOs, I think that's super important. When I was a freshman, I went to a quad day. I was walking around and found student space systems and also Illini Motorsports. I, off the bat, joined both and learned a lot about what aerospace had to offer in both. I know Formula SAE and Illini Motorsports is mostly has a lot of mechanical engineers, but I was in the aero and composite subsystems, and I felt like that opened up so many doors. It helped with networking opportunities, and I knew that kind of also was the shift in where my career interests lied, and I knew that my path was changing. Initially, I thought, like many others, I'd want to work at SpaceX or NASA, and it changed when I saw what aero had to offer in other industries. I think that's the biggest advantage of having an aero degree from Illinois is just seeing the overlap in industries, and then just knowing that we have that resilience, and you go through such a rigorous program, it prepares you so well. And I can also see that in the rotations that I go through now. So I know Steve mentioned working on interiors and glove boxes, which, I had to do that in one of my rotations. I have to say it was not very fun, but then I went to vehicle integration and I worked at SRT, and now I'm even in Jeep brand marketing. So it's totally different, like different aspects of engineering, and then also, jumping to marketing. But I felt like I was prepared and I had all the tools to succeed because of my degree from Illinois.
Awesome. So something I think that at least I know when I was a student, a lot of times there was a lot of pressure, right? You have to have an internship. And when you have an internship, you want it to be in aerospace, right? You want it to be a NASA, you want it to be Boeing, you want it to be Lockheed. You can put it basically on one hand who you want to work for. But the reality is there's a million great students all across the country, and only so many are going to get those. I'm curious what each of you guys think, or your experience of, internships and then first job, as far as, if students are applying and they can't get something in aerospace, what does that mean? Like, do you think that matters, for one? And then secondly, let's say they get that, internship, and they want to go on to a full-time job still in aero. How would you approach that? When you're looking at interviews, maybe your previous experience was automotive or something else. Kind of give them some advice if it's a varied resume, and maybe not just all aero right out of the gates.
I'll start first, kind of just talking about like internships in general and what I think on those. Like, obviously, I think everyone's going to tell you that getting an internship is one of the best things you can do. And I know everyone's trying to do that. One of the things that I kind of suggest is, in my experience, I found that most students often only look for summer internships because fall or spring could really push your graduation timeline, or it could affect your cohort experience. And I was in that same boat. And while it's true, I think I can't emphasize enough how much it's worth it if you get a spring or a fall offer. I did a co-op during the spring through summer of my junior year, but I think still to date, that might have been the best decision I made in regards to my career, just because it really provides so much context. So like, when you're a student, you find it annoying that recruiters will always ask you about previous internship or work experience that's precisely what you're trying to get by talking to them, right? And I was recruited last January for GE Aviation, particularly for engineering internships and co-ops. And during these career fairs, we end up talking to so many students that's kind of exhausting and hard to keep track of everything. And summer internships are super competitive because everyone wants one. But if you have these student organization things that you're in, like doing some technical project with the student groups, that really sticks out because individual projects are super important to recruiters. And even if you just are open to the idea of fall or spring, your likelihood of getting an interview is much higher, just because those are slots that are less competitive. So that's just the piece I want to provide up front, is keep that as a consideration because it'll be huge for you. In terms of not landing an aerospace job out the gates, I don't think that that's really a big issue almost at all. because your first few jobs, whatever your first few roles are, you're really just developing a lot of basic foundational skills that will translate anywhere. Like when you're first starting out your career, you just want to build a toolbox that's wide. Almost anything you can do, whatever job you're working will provide you skills that translate to an aerospace job. You'll still have that degree, you'll still have that technical competency, and getting some work experience under your belt, whether it's some other industry. I personally haven't had the experience, but I'm kind of doing the same thing, jumping away from aerospace into an industry that's computer science and Internet of Things. And all of the skills I got from aerospace are still translating straight over to that job. And I think it'd be vice versa. If I started somewhere in computer science space, I could still try, even if I was in aerospace engineering undergrad and started in computer science. I think a lot of the skills of problem solving will translate to aerospace companies. So I wouldn't worry too much about having that opportunity. Just continue to build that skill set as wide as you can at the beginning until you can get deep in where you want to go.
My memory is terrible, so I've already forgotten parts 2 and 3 of that question, so I might ask for a follow-up there. But to be upfront, so when I was in college, after my first year, so my freshman year, I was standards and safety engineer at John Deere. And then the summer after that, I was at NASA Goddard working on the asteroid redirect mission, the robotics side of that. And then I actually continued to work with them for the rest of my college years, part-time on winter breaks and summers, that kind of stuff. And then worked at Planet Labs, which was a startup in San Francisco working on tiny space satellites that you've probably seen some images of. And then finally at Symbi Robotics, which I mentioned before. Yeah, I will definitely say, like, especially with the first internship, apply to literally anything, get any first job, it doesn't matter, right? I was funny because the seniors of my freshman year, they said, it doesn't matter, going to the career fair doesn't really matter that much. You're probably not gonna get anything, which is true. But you need to go to build the skills in order to be better in networking. So when you talk to those recruiters, you can be confident and competent and say things that are gonna get you that interview. So I really went with the attitude to the career fair my freshman year of, yeah, I'm not gonna get anything, but this is an important set of skills to gather. So I actually went up to John Deere as the very first company at the career fair as a freshman, 3 weeks on campus, because they said, oh, this is a great company to try out on, get warmed up, and then you go to the aerospace companies. But they actually liked me. And so I ended up actually working there doing mostly paperwork engineering. So safety stuff and writing standards. So there's actually an ISO standard that has safety standard, that's my name on it. But it was all paperwork, had nothing to do with aerospace, had nothing to do with robotics. It was just, drilling into technical documentation. But I'll say that internship, of all my internships, I use more skills from that than I do anything I ever learned in any of my other internships combined. Learning technical writing skills and that kind of stuff. And you don't necessarily know how your path is going to move in the future. So, don't worry about not being aerospace for your first thing, because once you have that first internship, it is so much easier to get future internships. I think that especially where a lot of students are right now, you're thinking that, you apply to like 300 companies, you get like 3 interviews, maybe 1 offer. And that's maybe the statistics I had in college as well. I mean, you have to apply to literally just like every single thing that you can find. But then once you have even that little bit of experience, it goes from a 1% success rate to a 10% success rate. And then once you have 2 internships, it goes from a 10% success rate to a 50% success rate. And once you graduate college and you've had a job or 2 and you've really established yourself, well, you realize that it's not even a 50% anymore. Now it's like 80%, where if you apply somewhere, you're probably going to get an interview, and that interview is probably going to lead to a job. So, you're at the worst part of this in your career right now, and it's only going to get better in the future. So just, it gets better, is my message there. And once you have that first internship that gets you kind of in the door, where you can really get better statistics to go ahead and actually, get that job you want, definitely, focus on the companies that you think are going to be, interesting for your career. It's way easier to build upon the skills you have than it is to every single year or every couple of years just completely switch industries, which is kind of what I did a bit. So I wouldn't recommend that. So if you're able to get that second internship as being an area that you're really interested in, keep trying to build on that. And that way, when you graduate, it's not just like, one sporadic internship. You've now had several experiences. You can go in, not as a junior engineer level, but maybe, a normal engineer, or have a little bit more responsibility than you would have had otherwise as an entry level engineer. And I forgot the 2 parts of the question. So
I think you got all of them already, so you're good.
Okay.
You covered. Perfect. Violet.
Yep, I might have also forgotten parts of that question, but you could just let me know if I did. So I think it's really important to get internships, and getting that experience is key. Again, it opens up so many doors. I remember freshman year, I went and I was, I guess, really nervous. I had negative thoughts. I ended up not getting an internship, but experience through, again, other organizations and RSOs, I felt like helped prepare me, and also helped with the networking. So the next year, my sophomore year, I went back and I was determined to get an internship. I actually interned with Wittenstein, which is a German aerospace simulation company, but it was close to home. It's located in Bartlett, Illinois. So I spent the summer of sophomore year at home. I was interning at Wittenstein and taking a few classes online. And I quickly learned also that I didn't really like working in aerospace simulation, and it wasn't for me. But what the biggest takeaway from that was just getting that experience to corporate culture and going to work every day and having that responsibility. I think that's something that students need to experience, and it's really helpful after you graduate and you've entered the real world. But also networking. I want to go back to that. So Greg Fadler, who works at Fiat Chrysler, came down. It was my junior year after my first internship. And he was actually looking to recruit to work in the wind tunnel at Fiat Chrysler. And because I was on the formula team and I was, I guess, at the right place, the right time, I was at ESPL, and a bunch of companies go there to recruit and to look for good engineers. That was kind of my foot in the door at Chrysler. And I'm really grateful that I had that experience from being on the formula team, and also just being pushed by other mentors and professors to go to the career fairs and get experience. It all started with that first internship, and then that led to getting the wind tunnel job at Chrysler, and then eventually full-time. So yeah, really important. And I encourage everyone to go to the career fairs. I know last month it was virtual, but it shouldn't deter anyone from trying. You always put your name in.
Awesome. Thank you. So I think, especially today, we have a lot of seniors in the room. So I'd like to talk a little bit about grad school. I think it's cool because online right now, you all three have had very different grad school experiences. So I'd like you to just talk about why you decided to go to grad school and why you decided to study the field you are either currently studying or previously studied. And I'll keep it simple this time. So why you went to grad school and why you chose to study what you did.
All right. So the first master's degree was part of the program I did. The Edison Engineering Development Program requires you to get your master's as part of that whole package. So that's kind of the first reason why I went back to school. And it kind of worked out because I felt that if I stopped going to school, I wouldn't go back. So for me, it was kind of like, let's keep it going. I did mechanical engineering because that was the best synergy to what I was working on at the time. Working on a mechanical product, I already had the aerospace background, so getting some more of the mechanical design aspects and some of the more things that I didn't learn in AE would shore up that skill set. But then, as I kind of mentioned, I transitioned towards the data science world, even at the aerospace company. And I ultimately decided to go back for the second master's because of largely kind of a network issue and the foot in the door, because now a lot of people have the skill set or the degree of it, data science or statistics or whatever. And my background was engineering. So my network was within only engineering, and getting past a lot of those filters outside of my current industry was difficult. I could get data science jobs within industrial engineering and industrial companies like P&G and things like that, but I wanted to go into tech, which is super competitive. So I kind of had to get a network and a degree in that space to be able to break through into a different area.
Yeah, so I did my undergrad in aerospace, and kind of my big goal at the end of that was to go work on some really innovative stuff, and that was really the aim. And when you look around at Illinois, especially more than maybe some other universities, you find is that all the professors are really going to push you towards graduate school. There are definitely other universities I know folks from where they're really more pushing towards industry and they teach you industry tools, but aerospace at Illinois really like sets you up to like go to graduate school and then really kill it in graduate school. That was just kind of like, oh, this is the path I'm being groomed for. Of course, I'm just gonna go this way. I want to become a technical leader. You need to have a master's degree to get that, better salary bump and to be, having the leadership abilities. And then I moved to California, and then I found out that that's more of like a Midwest, East Coast way of looking at things, and that really the degrees don't matter. It's really what you can do out in California in the West Coast. And so after an internship at Symbio Robotics, where I had more or less re-architected a large chunk of their software as an intern, as an undergraduate intern, in fact, that they offered me this full-time job, and I had already accepted an offer in Illinois to go to graduate school. But I kind of, looked in the mirror and said, why am I doing this? I'm doing graduate school to be able to go and, lead an innovative team and do some innovative stuff. And, maybe that's not necessary in this particular case for me, at least. So I decided ultimately to, drop out of graduate school and go do full-time at working at the startup in the garage. And, I never looked back. I think that was probably the best decision I could have made in that garage. I was employee number 7, tons of equity in this tiny little company, and learned all these really applicable skill sets because there's no one else to answer the questions for you. And there's also, you have customers drilling you that you need this thing, right now in order to make revenue. So you're really pushed to the edge of like, you need to learn this stuff. And you need to become, your own leader and be able to figure out these problems yourself. And I think that was a really good trial by fire for me, at least. I don't think that necessarily everyone has that personality to do that, but I think a lot of people do. And that's worked out really well for me. And I've felt throughout my career, a little bit of not quite imposter syndrome, but I'll say a little bit of unease around not having an advanced degree, purely because robotics is such a research focused industry. And even though I publish papers, 2-3 papers a year at top conferences, one of my papers that is at IROS 2020 right now is a finalist for a best paper award. But I still feel a little iffy because I don't have a PhD, and most of my colleagues and the people who I'm managing or mentoring are PhD candidates or have PhDs themselves. So yeah, I have a little bit of a complicated personal experience with graduate school. I would definitely recommend everyone to at least seriously consider it, especially if you're going to be working at more traditional engineering companies. That the extra boost in salaries is significant over your career for an extra year or two. But if you're more doing it for a results-oriented reason, where you want to accelerate your career to a place, I just not think twice, but definitely consider the opportunities you have available to you because you have such a great undergraduate degree, and see if you're able to kind of have that grit for a couple of years in your career to build that capability yourself. But certainly, graduate school gives you a really good path, a well beaten path to learn those skills from instead.
Okay, so for me, I'm a first generation college grad, and I guess the idea of attending grad school was, I was skeptical, and it was I felt like out of reach. But once I interned at Fiat Chrysler, a lot of my mentors urged me to apply to the Chrysler Institute of Engineering rotational program. And then one of the incentives was that, they would pay for us to get our master's, and I would have a day off each week to work on my schoolwork. And I thought that was really attractive. I knew that if I got the program, or if I got the full-time job, it would push me to complete my master's. And it also worked out really well because it wasn't a thesis focused or like research focused. So I got to work in industry and at the same time, take night classes and earn my MS. But when it came down to it, the company offered either a master's in mechanical, in electrical, or mechatronics. And honestly, I hadn't heard of mechatronics much before, so I didn't know if that was, suitable. When it came to electrical, I didn't have the prereqs. There were, tons of classes I had to take, that electrical engineers take in their undergrad that I would have to do to enter that program. So naturally, I entered the mechanical engineering program, and I'm at Oakland University. but I think it's setting me up for a good future in the automotive industry, because a lot of the leaders and executives at our company also have mechanical engineering degrees, but went to Michigan schools and Oakland University as well. So there was kind of like no question. Once I got that job offer, I knew that I had to go to grad school, and it would set me up for my future. So.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to ask one more question, I think, and I'm going to give you guys a hard one. Make you be concise since we have like 5 minutes. Okay, so if you were to give advice, that the world's a little bit weird right now, the job world's a little bit weird right now, especially people trying to get internships and first time out of school, getting your first job. If you had to give advice to somebody coming out of Illinois right now in aerospace engineering, one piece of advice for the future, whether they're going into an aero or non-aero job, what would you tell them?
That's a good question. Give me 1 second to think about it. If one of the other of us have an answer, go for it.
only one. I can do a couple, but
Yeah, try to think of the one.
That's why it's a hard question. You only get one. It's got to be one
right.
good thing.
I'll start so Parth can pick a different one. I'm going to say competence in software. So obviously, I'm at the total extreme of things, right? Working in at a consumer electronics research company, right? But software is bleeding its way into every single industry. My friend Scott, who's now at NASA Ames doing fluid mechanics stuff, he's working in C++ and Fortran every single day. If you do dynamics in control, MATLAB, embedded C, C++, all going to be extremely necessary skill sets that I'm not even sure if you could get hired necessarily for a lot of jobs you might want without that skill. I can't speak too much about structures, but there are faculty at Illinois who are doing computational based structure analysis, and I think that's the future of our industry. And I think that it would have been possible 10, 20, 30 years ago to go through engineering, learn no software, and then go through a career and then not need any software. But I don't think that's where you are in the world. That's not where I am in the world. I don't think that's where any of us are in the world at this point. So not just learning how to script MATLAB for your homework assignments, and not just learning the basic intro to Python or whatever they're teaching. I'm talking about like genuine software engineering skills, take the data structures courses, or at least skim through textbooks, really understand the terminology of the field, because it's really going to impact you and your future job opportunities if you don't know how to program effectively.
All right, I think I got one now. I'd say, kind of because this is relevant to why I kind of went back to school, was I'd say make connections to get comfortable with kind of reaching out to people you don't know. You're going to be pretty tight with your cohort at aerospace right now, and maybe with friends that you have at Illinois, but don't be afraid to reach out, even cold call, reach out to people from, AE, IUC, on LinkedIn or on other platforms. Try to make your network as wide as you can. So don't just keep it within aerospace. If you can go outside of that and meet people and talk to them. People really like to talk about what they do. That's why the three of us are here right now. We all like to talk about ourselves. So, you reach out to somebody and you want help, it's going to go a long way. Your hit rate might be low. Like when I was cold calling people on LinkedIn, I maybe had a 20% hit rate, but a lot of those, my referral into Facebook came from just kind of cold reaching out to somebody. And a few people that I had previously reached out to for help are now coming back to me asking if I can refer them. So it's kind of a full network that helps out. The more you have in the time of uncertainty, when things go the way direction you don't want it to go, you'll have a big kind of safety net with those people you can reach out to for guidance, for referrals, for whatever. So cast wide and don't be afraid to reach out.
Okay, I would say my biggest piece of advice is to just keep learning. I know when you graduate, I feel like everyone just wants to like sleep for a week straight and just chill. But whether it's going in industry and then working on a master's degree, or just taking courses online or at a community college for fun, I think it's really important just to keep learning and keep your head active. Another thing is just to always ask the people around you. For example, like my coworkers, I feel like I always bother them because they're people that are experts in certain areas, and then that helps me stick to my goal to keep keep learning, because there's so much that I don't know that others can provide that information. And it's really important as an engineer is to always have that mindset that there's a lot out there that you still have to learn.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. So I think we probably want to open it up for questions now, either to an individual on the panel or all three of them. So if anybody wants to unmute and ask a question or type it into the chat, that would be awesome.
I'll ask a question for Violet. If you could go all the way back, what would you do differently?
Let's see. I think freshman year, I would have gotten out more, in more organizations and made more friends in aerospace. I think a lot of my friends from U of I now that I've made, came from junior and senior year. And at that point, I was sad and regretted that 2 years went by and I could have made those connections and those friendships because they're really good, lasting friendships. So.
Thank you.
Yep.
I'm gonna make Parth go next.
Oh, did not realize we were all answering that one. Yeah, I think I'd have to steal Steve's last comment on CS competencies. It kind of would have probably taken the computer science aspects of things more seriously, just because every job, everything I've done has some aspect of computer science into it. And it just goes a huge way in making you stand out. Even at these large aerospace companies that you're a mechanical designer, you can write some quick scripts to save your team a ton of time and then everyone loves you. It's like very basic things that you can make automated or improve upon by CS, and everything is going to have some aspect of CS into it. And I wish I just had those best practices earlier. It would have saved me a lot of time of not having to learn while trying to also learn how to be a mechanical engineer while also trying to do school. It's sort of nicer to do the first time around.
Yeah, I think for me, it would have been to actually probably take less classes. I took like full 18-hour workloads like every single semester. I took way more classes than I needed to, and I came with a bunch of AP credits or whatever. So there's a lot of things I just didn't have to do. And I think I missed out on some of the opportunities that I could have done otherwise. I've been a little bit more involved with clubs, had a little bit more personal time to deal with that kind of stuff. And just don't overwork yourself to death. It's you only live once, and you enjoy it, but work hard enough where there's outcomes that are useful. I think I've definitely learned that more in the last couple of years, where just because you can do something doesn't mean you should.
Steve, I think there's a question maybe for you or everybody in the chat about resources for coding, like learning coding if you don't have room in your schedule.
Yeah.
Well, don't. You just said.
Yeah. So so this is, again, I don't necessarily think that this my strategy works for everyone, but I can at least tell you what I did. So I'm always big on telling people where I'm gonna be and not where I am when I was in college. And so when I actually got the first job doing programming at Planet Labs, was doing some machine learning analysis for ground control stuff. I did not know Python, and I said I did. I basically learned enough for the interview to pass the interview, but needed them to actually learn, the data structures and how things are actually, working behind the scenes. And so actually during winter break, I sat down in the Aero Lab, and all the computer science courses, if you're an Illinois student, or maybe there's generally online for free, so you can watch all the lectures, and their lectures have a nice dial that let you run them at 2 times speed. So I went to the bookstore and I bought the data structures, the algorithms, the intro to computer science books. And I literally just sat there for 14 hours a day, just watching the lectures, going through the book, making sure I understood things. I didn't do the homework or anything, because the big thing is understanding the vocabulary and what the options are you have to work with within data structures and algorithms. No one needs to know how to make a search tree or whatever. Your language is going to do that for you. Don't worry about it unless you're trying to work for Google. If you're not trying to work for Google, you're fine just knowing what they are and which ones are better. And just sit down and just hammer through it. I swear, like the actual useful parts of a computer science degree is like 4 courses. After that, it's stuff that you need to be very specialized to go in a very specialized field, or maybe some general things to understand. But if you're just trying to understand good software engineering and having enough where you can start to apply those concepts, I think you can genuinely learn that in less than a month, if you really focus on it.
Awesome. So I see another cool question in the chat. What are you guys most looking forward to in your careers looking forward? Since we didn't really talk about that much.
I guess I can answer that one first. So I mentioned a few times that I'm in this rotational program. So I have three more rotations to get through, and then that'll complete the entire program. And then I'll be placed into the full-time job that I choose. I was speaking with a manager in the autonomous group at FCA, and I'm really looking forward to joining ADAS and being a design release engineer. Also, this program was a leadership development program, so as long as I do well as an engineer, I look forward to, I guess, someday becoming a manager and working my way up in industry.
You want to go, Steve?
Sure. I kind of skimmed over a bit of what I actually spend my time on a day-to-day. So ROS, for people who I assume most of you don't know, is the robot operating system. It's essentially the piping and the algorithms and the visualizations and the tools that we use to build really robust robots in a really scalable and very quick way. And so I spend a lot of my time working and building that tooling that's going into tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of robots around the globe. I work with 4 or 5 dozen companies to build these kinds of tools. So what I'm really excited moving forward is that ROS 2, which is the new kind of like real-time, super cool version of this that is going to really help the robots explode in use cases around the world. It's really starting to get maturity, and I'm lucky enough to come in at the right time where I'm leading one of the largest flagship projects for that community. And so I'm really excited in the next 2 or 3 years to see that a lot of the research and R&D that I've been doing over the last 2 or 3 years really starts to explode from a couple hundred robots to using the things that I'm working on to thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions. So that it's going to be really interesting to see in the next few years as robots start to explode across the world. Where I'm able to trace back software that I wrote in my early 20s.
And then I guess for me, like I said, I'm just finishing up my master's, and so I'll be starting a new job in a new field. So it's just exciting in itself. Kind of working on something that like 3 billion people use a day will be very different than my previous experiences. Just kind of something I see all the time in front of me. Will be interesting to work on, and I haven't gotten the team match yet, but I'm hoping to be working on the community integrity side of things. So the hate speech, the violence, because I think there's just a lot that social media doesn't do well, and I'm hoping there's ways that I can help improve that, or at least drive internal change.
All right. Do we have any other questions? If not, I think I'll hand it back over to you, Courtney.
All right, I just want to thank all of our panelists today. We so appreciate you taking some time out of your schedule. And Samantha, you too, as our moderator. Samantha has also, she and I have been working on developing this, along with Laura Gerhold, developing this entire series. So I just want to thank everybody for your time in helping to put this together, and for all the students and alumni that have joined us today. Join us again next week if you can, when we'll be talking with four other recent alums, and we'll be discussing life after Illinois, what you can expect once you graduate and what you need to be doing now to be prepared for that. So that is our session for today, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us.